Welcome into this week's PTN Extra. Good to be with you, Alyssa Orange, alongside Evan Kamiko and Mike Irwin. We're talking baseball, and guys, it's an exciting time of the year. We've got 3 more weeks of the regular season left, and we've got a pretty big logjam for the East, the West, and the SEC overall champion. And so this is going to be a very exciting final 3 weeks of the regular season. Here you see the top 2 teams in the East and the top 2 teams in the West, as well as really just the top 4 teams in the SEC right now. Arkansas 16-5, Kentucky 16-5, who, by the way, that's where Arkansas is headed this weekend. Tennessee 15-6. And the Aggies, the number 1 team in the country, 15-6 as well. But you also have to say, like, Mississippi State's 12-9. You've got 2 teams in Vanderbilt and South Carolina who have 11 wins on the season. And so you could find one of those teams also sneak up there, and it's a wide open race right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing, like you just mentioned, Mississippi State, they're coming to Arkansas. They're coming to Fayetteville in 2 weeks. But you start and you look at this Kentucky team, 16-5 in conference play, and what are they good at? They're good at getting on base, and they're good at hitting the ball, putting the ball in play, making things happen. Number 1 in batting average, number 3 in slug percentage, number 1 in on-base percentage. So they get on base. They're 13 when it comes to strikeouts. So this is a Kentucky team. They're not going to strike out a lot. They're going to make contact. They're going to get on base. And Ryan Nicholson, 14 home runs. He's their home run leader. We talk about Arkansas not having a big power guy, Vahiva Aloy, 10, 11 home runs right now. Kentucky's kind of in that same boat, but they have a really high batting average. They're hitting .314 at home, and it's going to be really interesting, especially when you look at Arkansas in the slate of Kentucky, A&M, and Mississippi State. That's probably the hardest out of all 3 of those teams.
Yeah, Mike, you've got an Arkansas and a Kentucky team right now. They're about to play. That's got A&M and Tennessee on their heels.
Well, look, all of these teams, even though they're different, they're obviously, if you look at the record, they're pretty even. If you start trying to look at head-to-head, how are they going to do against each other? Pretty evenly matched. I think it comes down to who you play in these last 3 series and where. And I look at Arkansas, and they've got the toughest road to hoe. They go to Kentucky. They got a tough game against Mississippi State. Then they go to A&M. They've got the 3 toughest teams to play of all of these. And then they've got 2 of them on the road. The easiest, come on, A&M. They got LSU, yes, on the road, and Ole Miss, yes, on the road, but they can sweep both of those teams, I promise you. And then they got Arkansas at home. And then Kentucky and Florida, it's kind of a wash. You could say Kentucky's got a tough way to go. They play Arkansas at home, though. Florida, pretty good team on the road. If you go on the road to play them, they're a pretty good team at home. Vandy, you play them at home. Vandy's a totally different team if you've got them at your place. And now look at Tennessee. They were the hottest team out there until last night. They lost a midweek game. They'd won 6 in a row. They got to go to Florida. They've got to go to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a totally different team at home, and then South Carolina at home. So I still say A&M's got the easiest road.
If you were a betting man, who wins the East, who wins the West, who wins the overall championship?
I think that A&M wins the East.
You mean the West? A&M wins the West.
A&M wins the West. I'm looking at this stuff. I'm trying to go Kentucky, Tennessee. I think Tennessee wins the East and A&M wins the West.
And A&M's your overall SEC champ?
Probably.
All right. You are a betting man, so what do you think?
Oh, man, it's really tough because you look, and I think the East is probably easier to decide than the West between Kentucky and Tennessee. They're neck and neck. I give Tennessee the edge, kind of like Mike. I think Kentucky, again, they haven't played great competition outside of the SEC, and when you look at them, they're really good at home. And again, that Vandy, Florida stretch, both of those Florida 9-12, Vandy 11-10. And on the flip side with Tennessee, you know, you just like what they have. Blake Burke, Billy Amick, really good pitching for Tennessee, a really favorable kind of end of schedule, like Mike already said. So I think I'll give the edge to Kentucky in the East. And when it comes to the West, I mean, as much as I'd like to say that Arkansas has a chance, I think this weekend's going to tell us a lot about them. Arkansas, we know the road struggles hitting .211 on the road. So I think it's going to come down to A&M. I think they're too good. I think they have too much pop in their lineup between Braden Montgomery and Jace Laviolette and, you know, who could be potentially the freshman of the year.
Yeah.
And Gavin Hauk, if I'm saying that correctly. So this is an A&M team that right now they're clicking on all cylinders, and it's really tough, I think, for Arkansas, especially with the schedule that they have of Mississippi State coming here. Mississippi State might have one of the best rotations right now on the weekend in the SEC with Cale Stevens and Durangelo Sagenti. Hopefully I pronounced that one right too, the ambidextrous pitcher in Mississippi State. So that's it's going to be a fun end of the season, but I think A&M's got the edge on the entire league.
It's going to be very, very wild. I think you're right when you look at Tennessee's overall record at 37-8. They've got a better overall record than Kentucky does. And I think you guys make really good points with A&M. I'll be the outlier. I'll say Arkansas wins the West. But if they do that, the offense has to show up more on the weekends. And so we'll see what happens again when now you're hitting Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Texas A&M pitching staffs. We'll see what happens.
And the big thing with the offense, I think it's got to be Kendall Diggs. If you really look at one player who needs to step up, he's been slumping. He was hot early on in SEC play. It's really cooled down. Didn't play yesterday. He's playing today. So I'll be curious to see how Kendall Diggs can step up and be that number one bat that Arkansas thought he was going to be. As great as Vahiva Aloy is, Vahiva Aloy has a lot of strikeout to home run ratio, a lot of high strikeouts, but I think Kendall Diggs is kind of the anchor in this lineup when it comes to looking at the season in general. And if somebody's got to step up for Arkansas, it has to be Kendall Diggs.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We're sending this guy down to College Station hopefully in a couple of weeks for that Arkansas A&M matchup, so should be a fun one. Speaking of A&M, some very interesting comments made by their head coach Jim Schlossnagle on Tex Ags. We are going to listen to that soundbite coming up after the break and get these guys' takes on it. Stick around. Welcome back to the show. We're going to continue talking about baseball in a soundbite that I saw because Evan sent it to me on Twitter. Like, you got to check out what Jim Schlossnagle, the head coach at Texas A&M, said. Mike came in talking about the soundbite, so thus it's only appropriate that we talk about it here on PTN Extra. But before we do, let's play the clip for you.
Major League Baseball has its own portal system, and that each team is bought into. Each team gets the same exact stuff, but they cannot, there's a way for them to block a live feed to the dugout, okay? Well, that costs money. It costs a ridiculous amount of money. College baseball doesn't have that kind of money, even the SEC. So where do you draw the line? I mean, there are ways we could wire our dugout to get the live feed, and there's a school in our league that got busted. I don't know if people know it yet. I'm not going to reveal it, but they know they had a live feed. They've had a live feed going to the dugout all year, and they're hitting 306 at home and 206 on the road. I don't know. So to me, that would be the line.
Very, very interesting stuff there. And if you go to SEC Baseball on Twitter, they kind of broke down the home and away batting averages, and none of those fit those numbers specifically. So we've been sitting around like, what does he mean? Is it only an SEC play? We've been trying to like deep dive. You were going to deep dive and do some math. I don't know if you actually did.
The math wasn't mathing.
That was a very lofty, ambitious task of yours. But Mike, when you hear a head coach kind of say this and be like, well, I don't want to say, but I'm going to go ahead and say, what do you think?
What's he doing here?
Yeah.
What's he doing? He says they got caught. That suggests the SEC office knows about it. Why is he the one to reveal this? Why do you not wait till they do something? And think about all the other coaches in the league. They're not saying anything. By doing what he did, he's left people thinking any one of 3 or 4 teams. And so there may be teams out there that had nothing to do with this, but people are thinking, oh, it had to be them. Arkansas, one of them. So their fans are wondering, hey, did we do that? Other people are going, yeah, you guys did that. I just think it was totally inappropriate for him to bring this up. None of the other 13 coaches, I assume they all know about it. They didn't say anything. Why did he say something?
What do you think?
And I mean, before I jump off into devil's advocate to Mike, I think one, he's saying that because at some point the SEC's got to make a statement about this. Now this information is out. They know there's a team doing this. I think everyone's kind of curious. I think the coaches know by now who it is. The question is, again, what team falls under that? And quite honestly, when you look at the teams, and we were looking at the batting averages earlier, there's 2 teams that make sense. If you think about teams that Texas A&M's played on the road. It's Mississippi State and Vanderbilt. Both of those are hitting around 310, 306, and have those 70 percentage number drops when it comes to batting average. So those are the first 2 teams that you kind of think of. But why did he say that? I think maybe to stir up some pot drama when you look at kind of the top of the pot for the SEC of Kentucky, A&M, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Arkansas, all kind of together. I think it's, to understand that there's an announcement that's going to have to happen. It has to come at some point, whether that's, a suspension or potentially, getting in trouble. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
But why did he do that? I'm not sure.
It's very interesting to me, and I'm sure a lot of people did what we did today when we were in this morning. Is we went through and who did they play? Well, surely he's got to be talking about a team that they've played already. But then that's kind of where it would name it. But they played some of these other teams at home. Well, it wouldn't be at home. Like, we were going through every possible scenario. Is he talking out of line again? Like you said, are they talking about Arkansas? Could this be Arkansas? Who knows? But they just played Georgia, correct?
Yes.
And there was that whole thing on social media over the weekend with the Georgia pitcher in the corner of the bullpen doing something. And there was that whole thing. And do you think it had something to do with that video getting out there, Mike, against A&M? And now he makes this comment about some kind of cheating.
That's the only thing that makes any sense to me, is that he's mad about that, but couldn't do anything about it. So, hey, I've got him. I'm going to bust him on this other thing. I'm going to call him out on this. But that might, again, the problem with this is we're speculating, and we could be totally wrong.
Exactly.
And that's why, if I'm Greg Sankey, I kick his rear end. I do. I call his AD and I say, you either talk to him or I will, because this is for us to deal with, not him.
Yeah, it was a really interesting take. And again, it's the biggest baseball thing that people are talking about on social media. So, of course, we had to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
But it'll be fun. Again, we've got 3 more weeks of SEC regular season before we head on to Hoover for the SEC tournament and hopefully a fun ride into the postseason. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's PTN Extra. We'll see you next week.